Hi, Greg Sullivan here with Japan Spirit Guide, and we're talking today about what is spirituality in Japan. It's such an enormous word for any country, but as you know, Japan has so many amazing modalities and ancient religions and takes on spirituality that exists nowhere else on earth. And we often from the West view Japan as being this deeply spiritual place. And that word, of course, has so many nuances and meanings that it'll take many videos to really unpack that. First off, this question is not really asked directly to many Japanese people. I've been in Japan almost 20 years, and I'm a spiritual coach and counselor, a household name in the community here. But based on my experience, you know, mainly Japan is based on Buddhism and Shintoism. Shintoism being the original native philosophy or native animistic form of nature worship. Most of the spiritual people here tend to defer to Shinto because that was pre-Buddhism. But of course, they both coexist in harmony as well. Then there's, of course, esoteric Buddhism and other sects. Mikkyō is one of the big ones with Kukai. He was one of the most famous monks who started the 88 temple tour in Shikoku and was a major pioneer in a lot of even the modern parts of Buddhism in Japan. And there's also esoteric Shinto, it's also sometimes called Ura-Shinto, where there's, different actual rituals and maybe like Shinto magic or practices of aestheticism and yamabushi, things like this, where communion with nature and the actual cleansing of the soul, the actual spiritual practice of Shintoism is big here as well. And so what kind of spiritual groups, what kind of spiritual topics, what kind of spiritual things exist in Japan? I'd like to break that list down a little bit. From what I can tell, it's a real blend of different historical eras and different modalities, different groups, and different streams of thoughts or philosophies. Many of the traditions are also, while widely documented, some of them are very unknown even to Japanese people, and there are very small pockets of people practicing really esoteric and amazingly strange and unique versions of Shinto or advanced esoteric religion or magical traditions. So there's that happening here too. And we'll also extend to cover those minor ones on this channel as well. Also, there's a new religious element, which are more modern sects of Buddhism or Shintoism, where practices may not be monitored by national agencies or government agencies or any sort of governing body. And that led up to problems which could include extortion, basically. And of course, that culminated with the assassination of ex-Prime Minister Shinzo Abe by a disgruntled family member of people who were really manipulated by this religious organization based out of Korea. And just recently, the head of that was arrested. So it's really, you might even call some of them cult religions. That is, unfortunately, one of the larger things you see these days. And they still collect money and they still stand outside of the station trying to attract new practitioners, as well. Of course, the Western New Age is huge, and that's my main home base is, the Western New Age imported to Japan, from yoga to hemisync to tarot cards, and any variation of these Western modalities. They often have their own company here, and every year we have something called the Iashi Fair in Tokyo, which in its peak was having like 30,000 people over the course of one weekend, and that's held at the Tokyo Big Site, which is an enormous convention center. And so I was localizing media from the Disclosure Project and other space-related topics. I had my own, stance for a long time, but at the same time I was able to really have a lot of back and forth with other researchers and pioneers in the Japanese genres. So that's going to be the base of a lot of our actual experience in the field that I can talk from actual experience and knowledge when I make videos for this channel. But as you might have seen in Scorsese's film Silence, with the hidden Christians in Nagasaki in the Edo period, there's a mystique about the Western spirituality, and it's all, of course, it depends on the person how committed they are. A lot of it can be just glamour and hype or spin, and it's a very commercialized, extremely commercialized business. The holy trinity of New Age here are the books, seminars, workshops, and goods, like the different power stones and other accessories, So it's a huge industry here, and we've tried to stay our own and stay independent, stay pure, and I think I've done a pretty good job at that. Of course, there's other personal wellness and vegetarianism. One of our publishers is the publisher of a magazine called Veggie, the only monthly vegetarian magazine here. And so there's all other sorts of, dietary nutrition, wellness, and things like that here as well. Of course, with the onsen culture and the sauna culture here, and the massage and chiropractic culture here, there's also a lot of just wellness baked into the Asian culture as well. But at the same time, there's a dark side with the culture of gaman, like, putting up with stuff and just grin and bear it. This is the really the essence of that word. And so learning to push your own ego down, not being able to express yourself in a healthy way is sort of one of the downsides. And this really keeps a sort of a negative spiral occurring where people are easily prey for these type of manipulative groups or teachers. I've written about that quite a bit and cautioned people about the tricks and techniques of the so-called false light teachers, or the people who are just in it for other negative reasons. And of course, with the already high suicide rate and lots of children, with the bullying in schools that occurs, and then of course with the major mental health crisis around the world thanks to the COVID pandemic, this issue is really on the forefront of a lot of people's minds. And of course, like in the Christian society, traditional religions are finding that they're reaching sort of like an expiry date, or like their modalities and methods are becoming quickly outdated. But like a lot of issues with Japan, the path is a disappearing one. So the spiritual path or the spiritual life in Japan is changing rapidly, where just as in a lot of industries and with cultural events, festivals, with the decreasing population, especially in rural areas where these prefectural identity was always quite strong, we have the culture itself is becoming really worn thin. And the young generation's lack of interest and true dedication to modern Western culture, and now with the advances in online technology and AI and everything, it's going to become harder and harder to maybe keep these spiritual traditions going. So the fact that we're going to be documenting this, and it will be a really helpful thing, I think. Also, with the weakening yen and the economy downturn, a lot of family businesses are ending long, several multi-generational runs where there's no one to take it on, or the children or grandchildren, their only option really is to move out of the countryside and to big cities like Tokyo or Osaka. These are all realities that are facing everyone on an everyday level in these last few years. So thanks, and please support the channel by subscribing, clicking the notifications bell, and a like on this video. Thank you. We'll see you again. And I'm the Japan Spirit Guide, Gregory Sullivan.